It's official. Universal school choice is now Republican Party policy. On July 8th, the Republican Party officially published its policy program for 2024, and one of its flagship proposals is the idea of universal school choice. This means that under universal school choice, every family in America would get the tax dollars that are there to educate their child paid into something called an education freedom account. And that money would then be left up to them to spend at a school of their choice. This means that you would see every American having the opportunities and able to make the choices that today only rich people can make. It would mean that you had real parent power in the education system. It would mean that you had choice and competition. You would see different schools trying to copy good practice in other schools. It would transform education standards across the country. Donald Trump, the Republican candidate for the presidency, is probably the most pro-school choice person to ever run for the White House. He's on record as saying that the struggle for school choice is the 21st century civil rights struggle. So why aren't all Republicans in favor of school choice? If it's Donald Trump's policy, if it's official Republican Party platform, why are some Republicans in states like Mississippi so reluctant to embrace parent power? Why are they so intransigent? Well, here in Mississippi, Republicans have been in charge for quite a long time. We've had a Republican governor since, I think, 2002. We've had a Republican-controlled state Senate since, I think, 2011. And we've had a Republican-controlled House in Mississippi since 2012. What have they done with it? What have they done to achieve school choice? Well, some would say in their defense they passed legislation to allow charter schools. The only problem with that is a decade after they passed that law, we've got a mere 10 charter schools in the entire state. That might provide a fig leaf of cover for some Republicans to say they favour school choice. It doesn't actually mean they've done a lot to advance school choice where it matters. Some would point out that in the recent legislative session, Mississippi passed a law to reform the school funding system so that every child now gets a personalised budget, a tailor-made budget for them. That's great, but it's not much good if they can't then take that money and allocate it to a school of their choice. It doesn't really change much if they're still locked into a system that they can't escape from. So why is it that Republicans in some states like Mississippi have done so little to actually embrace what is now Republican Party mainstream thinking? I think part of the problem in Mississippi is complacency. There's been a lot of talk in Mississippi about this idea that education is improving. There's been a Mississippi miracle. And those who put forward this idea of the Mississippi miracle point to the fact that there's been some relative improvement in reading standards in Mississippi compared to other states. But actually the Mississippi miracle is a bit of a myth. If you dig down into the data, it doesn't actually show that Mississippi's reading standards have dramatically improved. It shows there's been a marginal improvement. And what's really happened is that standards in other states during COVID plummeted. They got far worse, meaning that Mississippi's relative rankings improved. Now, we mustn't allow a complacent belief in the myth of the Mississippi miracle to do away with the idea that our education system here in Mississippi needs far-reaching change. Here are just a couple of quite shocking statistics about education in Mississippi. Right now in Mississippi, over 100,000 students are chronically absent from school. Over 100,000. That's 1 in 4 students in Mississippi regularly doesn't turn up. Things can't be fine and dandy if 1 in 4 kids aren't showing up. Forget the claims that there's been a Mississippi miracle with rising standards. The shocking truth is that amongst 4th graders, 40%, 4 out of 10 4th graders, have not reached the basic standard of reading. 40%. Not much of a miracle if 40% of your 4th graders can't even read properly. We need real change in Mississippi, and we need real change in Mississippi's education system. Now, we're surrounded by states here in Mississippi that are doing this, that are doing what is now official Republican Party policy. The Republican Party didn't centrally decide to embrace school choice. They embraced school choice because Republicans across the country, particularly in the southern United States, are embracing school choice. They're giving parents power. Now, they've done this in Arkansas. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the relatively new governor of Arkansas, made reform of education her flagship policy. She didn't pretend that things were better than they were in Arkansas. She recognized the reality, which is that education is just not good enough in that state, and she's done something about it with the LEARNS Act. The LEARNS Act gives every mum and dad in Arkansas control over their share of tax dollars. That gives them control over between $7,000 and $8,000 a year, which they can then allocate to a school of their choice. Now, if Arkansas can do it, why can't we? Alabama's done it too. Louisiana did it. Louisiana has only had a Republican governor for just over a year, and they've managed to do it. They've managed to do more for school choice in 12 months than Mississippi has managed in 12 years. Come on, guys, wake up. It's now official Republican Party policy to give people universal school choice. They've done it on 3 out of the 4 neighboring states around us. What is it going to take for Mississippi to do it too? Why do we always need to be last? We don't. Let's take a lead on this. It's not just school choice where I think perhaps we need to push for some change in Mississippi. As I mentioned earlier, we've had 12 years of supermajority Republican government in this state. What's changed? Well, they changed the flag. Now, you might think that's a great thing, you might not. Whether you think it's a good thing or not, I think you'll agree that changing the flag isn't perhaps the only thing you should have to show for 12 years of governance. And to be fair, it's not. A law was passed in 2013 that insisted upon the use of phonics for teaching. That had some impact. A law was passed to allow the creation of charter schools. That's had some impact for the 10 schools that are now charter schools. But where's the big, bold vision? A couple of years ago, there was the Mississippi Tax Freedom Act, which gave people back a rebate by reducing the state income tax. It's eventually lowering it down to a flat 4%. But it still means that the massive budget surplus that Mississippi has had is not being handed back to taxpayers in its entirety. A lot of that is actually going to be squandered by politicians and their pet projects. Now, I could understand if the argument was we can't give people tax cuts because we need to prop up things like PERS, the Public Employee Retirement Scheme. If there was an argument made that we actually need to make sure that the debts that will be incurred and imposed upon future generations through the PERS scheme need to be taken care of now. But they're not doing that. They're not using that surplus to pay down what's owed on PERS. They're finding all sorts of things to spend the money on, other than tax cuts or good housekeeping on PERS. This should bother us. Conservatives ought to understand the importance of lowering taxation. They ought to understand the importance of school choice. Mississippi Republicans need to recognize that this is an overwhelmingly conservative state. And in an overwhelmingly conservative state, people who are elected as conservatives need to deliver real conservative change. It's not enough to run for office by saying you hunt. It's not enough to seek votes by having the right sticker on your truck. After a decade in office, it's time to actually deliver. I hope that Mississippi will see its conservative Republicans actually push for meaningful school choice. Donald Trump is a staunch supporter of school choice. I can't imagine that Donald Trump would look too kindly on Republicans in a state like Mississippi who didn't deliver on school choice. It doesn't matter how often you go to visit him in Florida. It doesn't matter how often you try and get a photo opportunity with him at Mar-a-Lago. I suspect he's not going to look up from his iPad and give you that photo opportunity if you don't actually deliver on an issue close to his heart. It's not just close to Donald Trump's heart, it's an issue close to the hearts of thousands, tens of thousands of families here in Mississippi. I've looked at polling data that shows that Universal school choice, giving mums and dads control over their tax dollars, allowing the tax dollars to follow the child, giving parents power is wildly popular. It's wildly popular not just amongst traditional Republicans either. It is, as Donald Trump correctly says, the civil rights issue of our time. It will give every family in Mississippi, from Hinds County to the coast, from the Delta to DeSoto County, the power to ensure that their children get the education that works for them. It will be transformative for this state. Let's hope that conservatives in Mississippi take note of what is now official Republican Party policy and deliver. As Republicans in Mississippi prepare for the 2025 legislative session, let's hope they have something more to offer the voters than no to school choice.